All right, good evening. And thank you all for being here. And anybody who's joining us online, tonight we have a very special guest, Rene Gaitan, who's actually the leader of the CARES program. And for those of you who haven't joined us before, CARES is a program that was designed to provide resources to families who have issues with addiction in the family. So it's essentially a program that's designed to cure problem that we saw in the community that wasn't being addressed with regards to therapy for families and healing and support for those families and helping them through the education process as well, which is desperately needed. And Rene is a very special guest tonight because he's actually the director of the program. Rene came to us at the University of Texas. He's got a quite extensive background as a licensed therapist and at a career that's over 20 years. Is that correct? And essentially, through CARES, myself and Waylon Johnson were involved in founding this program. And we thought it would be fun tonight to hear Rene's story because he's got an incredible story and background that brought him to us in this program. And it's been a phenomenal start, Rene, and we really appreciate you being here. And Rene's always been a very talented interviewer on Monday nights, and we enjoy the time that he spends with us here and the resources that he brings to the CARES program. First of all, I'd like to talk about the program itself, and we're here every Monday night. We live stream this program, so quick disclaimer, because it's live stream, we try to keep family members' names anonymous and don't mention those. We also offer recordings of all the sessions so you can share with your friends and tell others about the program, and we would encourage you to do so. And I always give a little commercial for the program because we started it near the beginning of March, I believe, and in the month of March, we had over 650 people visit our website to learn more about the program, which was pretty exciting. And so now I believe this is our 10th week, and we get an opportunity to hear from the Master of Ceremonies here, our good friend Rene, and so Rene, what I'd like to do tonight is just start off by turning it over to you and you know, as tradition, let you talk a little bit about your background, your family history, which is incredible, and share a little bit about your story with our guest tonight.
Well, I got to say, it's a happy privilege to be here every Monday night, and I feel very anxious to be in the hot seat. I think I've seen YouTube videos. I almost expected we were going to eat hot wings or something, but I still feel like I need my water close by, even though we're not eating hot wings. If we haven't met, my name is Rene Gaitan. I'm a clinical assistant professor with UT in the School of Social Work and associate faculty with the School of Law. That just means I get to say fun things like I dismiss the class, not the bell. And yes, everything is going to be on the final. But there's a journey that led to that moment of being in that space of teaching. I'm originally from El Salvador. I came from Central America during the Civil War that was very brutal, very bloody, and very traumatic. And so my journey was my mother and I meeting with my father. My father found out that my mother was expecting when he had already made a trek to the United States. And when he found out, he worked as a busboy, saved money in a jar for 2 years until he can afford to send for my mother and I. My mother and I made that journey, and there was a lot of danger that was along that way. My mother was a young mom. She was 19 years old. 19 years old with her 2-year-old. Going to a place that she didn't know the language, she didn't know anyone. It was dangerous traveling there, and it was dangerous arriving there. My father, his education level was 5th grade. My mother's was 2nd grade. And I always make a point to share anytime I have the opportunity to speak that they are the 2 most brilliant people I have ever known in my life. To have raised 4 kids and the circumstances that they went through and all the struggles. Please know that I give them full credit for all the good that's here. But they struggled. They struggled as well. And my father, being young with all the trauma that happened in the war, like many people who are traumatized from a war, turned to alcohol. And that was numbing for him. And that caused a lot of issues and difficulties until he found a space to leave alcohol. Part of that was a community that connected with him. Part of that was also myself as his son, as he would tell me later on, telling him, Dad, no more drinking, please, please, because of all that was going on. I'm very grateful that that journey led to us growing as a family. But part of the reason why I wanted to share and be a part of this is my story isn't the story of recovery in myself. My story is as the family member, as a child. What does that do to a kid when you see your father fall apart when there's alcohol, or you see police showing up and being very physical and confrontational with this person who's your superhero? What does that do to you? So for me, it put me on a path where I needed to be of service. My form of being useful was helping my dad, protecting my mom, protecting the people most vulnerable in my life. And that led me to a career where I went into social work. And it's interesting because last week we had Dr. Norma Mercado who shared about the ACEs study. And one thing that struck me was something I had heard about this ACEs study, which is adverse childhood experiences. It's a way of figuring out, has a person experienced trauma and how severe it is. And to try this out, they tried it in a room full of clinicians and therapists. No surprise, everyone was off the charts with trauma. And I'm no exception. I'm one of many people who took a life of wanting to help because I understood that pain. But that comes at a cost. The reason why I talked about burnout, and it's one of my favorite things to bring up in classes and in conferences, is when I ask people about burnout, do you understand what that means or where does that come from? And most people will point to a term that was created in the 70s and it was followed up in the healthcare profession. So we're talking to nurses and about what happens when you are exhausted from all this work. But if you go a little further, it was actually brought up when they were investigating flight air traffic control crashes between planes. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Why is this happening? And as they studied, they realized that those people that are controlling the air traffic were the best of the best. Now, in the 60s, who would be the best of the best when it comes to piloting and air traffic control? They would be the veterans. These were the people that flew planes. They knew how to handle things. And here was the trick in all of this. When they looked at this, these are the most qualified professionals you could find. How are they making mistakes? Well, when you look at their schedules, they're double booked. They need more coffee, more cigarettes. They have to stay awake. They have to complete the mission. There is no failure. Failure is not an option. It was built into their DNA. It was built into who they were. But your body can only do so much before you start making mistakes and people start to get hurt. And that's what they realized. And so the term burnout was a reference to soldiers who were flying planes, and when they were out of fuel and they were coasting on fumes, it was termed burnout. This was your last chance to escape. This is the last bit of fuel that you have to make it through, and you don't have any fuel to go with. And so it makes sense that we would still use that term today when we talk about the caregivers, the relatives, first responders, people who don't know when to say, I need to pull back, I need to take a break, I need to look in the mirror, and I need help. Because that's not your job. Your job is to be available to everyone else. So as a clinician, as a father, I can tell you the trauma experience that continues and why it's so important that programs like this, you build around a community to take care of yourself, to have people take care of you. My father, though he quit alcohol and he was sober for 30 years, caught an infection that decimated his liver. And so we got to see what life would have looked like if he had died of liver failure from alcoholism. And ironically, the thing that he escaped, the reason why he had quit, caught up to him. So as a social worker, how am I going to help everyone else if I can't help my own father? So I set everything aside. We went to the hospital, went to the multiple visits, the multiple ICU admissions, the many times where they had to pull fluid out of his abdomen because of the buildup, because his liver wasn't processing, the pain that he was going through. And my father, you have to understand, this guy, They don't make them like they used to. I'm definitely not that model. You know, it's like he would tough it out. You know, there was no, you went to work, you weren't sick. This is what we need to do. You don't cry about this. So to see this man that I've known my whole life